Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Snyder.
And I'm Natasha Brown. Welcome to this special edition of CBS News Philadelphia. The 2024 presidential election is just days away now. With 19 electoral college votes at stake, Pennsylvania, a battleground state, could sway the results of this election one way or the other.
Here at home, Philadelphia and the Delaware Valley region as a whole have been the site of some of the most pivotal moments of this campaign cycle. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll take you back through some of our biggest election stories. Experts have said Pennsylvania will play a key role in the 2024 election. The candidates, Vice President Kamala Harris and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, and former President Donald Trump and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, have regularly traveled to our area in the months ahead of Election Day.
And speaking at Point Park University in Pittsburgh in September, CBS News chief elections and campaign correspondent Robert Costa reiterated just how important Pennsylvania is leading up to November 5th.
It's hard to see a path to the White House for either candidate that doesn't run through Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is crucial when it comes to the electoral map. For Vice President Harris, it's about countering Trump in Western Pennsylvania, not letting him run up the score. There's a belief inside the Harris campaign that some of these moderate Republicans could be persuaded to either stay home or, even better for the Democrats, vote for Harris because they just don't like Trump. For Trump, it's all about making sure that aggrieved voter, the ex-urban voter, the rural voter, and that classical Republican comes out for him.
Former President Trump won Pennsylvania in 2016, but then President Joe Biden flipped the state in 2020. His campaign headquarters was in Philadelphia 4 years ago, and he visited the city several times this year before ending his re-election campaign in July. That set the stage for Kamala Harris's run for president. As you remember, it was a stunning announcement from Biden. Here's a look at how Philadelphia area lawmakers and some of you reacted.
You heard me say it before, but I'll say it.
President Biden exiting the race at this point is absolutely historic.
With just over 100 days until Election Day, President Joe Biden announced he would end his bid to stay in the White House. Despite weeks of pressure by Democrats for Biden to drop out of the race, his decision Sunday left many in our area shocked. But it's a move lawmakers say they support.
That's good enough for Joe Biden. It's good enough for me.
It's heartbreaking in that sense, but I think he understood that the time was right to pass that torch.
Biden hopes to pass the torch to Vice President Kamala Harris, quickly endorsing his running mate to lead the party. Harris has since earned the backing of many top Democrats, including Congressman Boyle and Norcross. Lawmakers and local delegates to the Democratic National Convention say they believe Harris can bring new energy to the campaign.
I do feel like the ground is, mobilized, extremely excited.
Supporters pointed to Harris's record as a prosecutor, her stance on reproductive rights, and the 3.5 years she spent by Biden's side as strengths the VP can bring to a campaign. But endorsements alone won't give Harris the nomination. People we spoke with made clear Harris will have to earn the spot at the top of the ticket.
She has to make her case. This is not an anointment. We have delegates that were elected that are there to do their job.
She has to still earn the nomination. She still has to, talk to the delegates, talk to the leaders of parties in different states.
And that process is already underway. Just before 3 p.m. Monday, Pennsylvania's delegation to the DNC endorsed Harris for president in what they call a unanimous decision. While Harris has plenty more delegates to lock up, Democrats I spoke with believe she will be the nominee.
I think that it is highly unlikely that Kamala Harris faces any sort of serious challenge at the convention.
Well, speculation quickly grew around who Harris would pick for her running mate. Democratic Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro landed on the short list.
I'm not going to engage in these hypotheticals. The vice president's going to make the decision she wants to make.
Governor Shapiro not giving much away as speculation swirls that he's a front-runner to be named Vice President Kamala Harris's running mate. Shapiro was at Cheney University Friday to tout higher education funding, but even those in attendance couldn't resist weighing in on the rumors.
We also have a governor and hopefully future VP.
I'm sure he might be available, all right? All right, if you ask now, okay, because, things could change, all right?
Shapiro reiterated that this is a deeply personal decision for Harris and hers alone to make. He also confirmed that he has not spoken directly with Harris since the night President Biden withdrew from the race. But the governor did react to this comment from Republican VP nominee J.D. Vance, who appeared on the Full Send podcast.
Guy Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania, who You know, I've seen a couple clips of him talking. He talks like Barack Obama. It's like if I did try to do a really bad impression of Barack Obama, that's what it would sound like.
If he wants to sling insults in my direction, which I'm not even sure is an insult, let him do it. That's fine. Bring it on. I'll be ready for whatever the hell J.D. Vance throws my direction.
Shapiro's resume is likely a draw for the Harris campaign. He's a governor with high approval ratings, working with a divided legislature in arguably the most important battleground state. Pennsylvania Democrats have lined up to back Shapiro for the job, and even Republican Congressman Dan Muser, who we spoke with before Wednesday's Trump rally in Harrisburg, sees the appeal.
It's probably a smart pick from their point of view, and it will certainly help some because he is popular.
But Muser did have a warning for Shapiro, saying he doesn't know how well the governor will fit in policy-wise on a Harris ticket.
I don't know him to be that radical. So we'll see how he handles that if, in fact, he's the vice president nominee.
In August, Shapiro traveled to Washington, D.C. to meet with Harris as she prepared to pick her running mate. Some voters told us they hoped Shapiro would stay on as governor. Others welcomed the idea of a Harris-Shapiro ticket.
I've watched what he's done for the city, for the state, and he's terrific. I've listened to him talk. He's got a lot of spirit, and I really think he'd be great as a vice president.
I really honestly think they'll be an awesome match, and we'll move America forward.
I love Josh Shapiro and what he's done for the state. He's a very strong candidate. I also think Pennsylvania is a swing state, and it'll help get her the state electoral votes.
Harris ended up choosing Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate, an announcement that happened right here in Philadelphia. CBS News Philadelphia's Alicia Roberts takes a look at the rally that launched the Democratic ticket and how Republican J.D. Vance responded.
Kamala Harris in her first campaign stop alongside her newly announced running mate Tim Walz greeted an enthusiastic crowd in Philadelphia Tuesday night, 2 weeks after President Biden dropped out of the race.
I stand before you today to proudly announce I am now officially the Democratic nominee for President of the United States.
Harris says her fight for the White House goes beyond Donald Trump and focused on issues including reproductive rights, voting, and the economy.
Tim Walz and I, we agree about many things, including when our middle class is strong, America is strong.
Walz spoke after Harris, pushing for progress, not the past.
Trump weakens our economy to strengthen his own hand. He mocks our laws. He sows chaos and division.
Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, whose name was linked as a possible VP candidate, was also on hand, encouraging Pennsylvania voters to elect Harris.
Kamala Harris has always understood that you got to be every day for the people.
Meantime, Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance spent the day in Philadelphia as well.
It's great to be in South Philly, isn't it?
Addressing a packed audience inside the 2300 arena.
For the past 2 weeks, Kamala Harris has been saying that she wants a promotion. I think we ought to say to Kamala Harris, you're fired, and rehire Donald J. Trump as President of the United States.
Issues at the border, the drug crisis, and crime became the focus of his campaign event.
Every time Kamala Harris took an action to open the American southern border, it is families like many of those who stand behind me today who have suffered the most.
Alicia Roberts, CBS News, Philadelphia.
Well, coming up, the candidates come to Philadelphia for the only presidential debate of the election season.
We'll have more on how local voters felt after watching Trump and Harris go head-to-head for the first time.
Plus, one-on-one with J.D. Vance, what the Ohio senator had to say about election integrity and what it'll take for the Republican ticket to win Pennsylvania.
Welcome back to this special edition of CBS News Philadelphia. Our city took center stage in September as the host of the only debate between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris.
Well, the venue, the National Constitution Center. The Constitution Center has a history of hosting major political events, including a 2008 Democratic primary debate and 2 ABC News town halls leading up to the 2020 election. And as the birthplace of our nation, Philadelphia has long been at the forefront of political debate.
the city that hosted the first Continental Congress, a place where founding fathers gathered to debate the ideals that would shape this country. So it's very fitting that we're hosting something like this. And this is just hopefully a preview to what we're going to see in 2026 when we have more people come in for World Cup.
Well, a handshake kicked off the debate before Harris and Trump spent 90 minutes sparring over issues like border security, abortion, and the economy as they made their pitch to the American people.
She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it?
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us, and we can chart a new way forward.
Well, after the debate, we went to Bucks County, one of the areas Republicans are trying very hard to win in this election. And there, voters had lots of opinions, but most of the people that we talked to said that they were not swayed to change their vote.
She crushed it.
I didn't learn anything new. They were both weak, and nobody's mind is going to be changed.
I'm a little concerned. On both sides.
Lots of opinions in Doylestown Wednesday, one day after the first and maybe only Trump-Harris debate. In all-important Pennsylvania, Harris voters say they came away pleased with the VP's showing.
I thought that Kamala showed that she has a good idea for how she wants to lead this country.
I used to say Obama used to have a rope-a-dope, and then she did the same thing.
Meanwhile, Trump supporters didn't mince words on his performance.
Weak. I don't think he impressed anybody.
I think Trump had a great opportunity and he blew it.
The candidates were asked questions on some of the top issues facing voters in 2024, including the economy, immigration, and abortion. But things often devolved into personal attacks. Some voters were looking for a little more substance.
I wish I heard more, less politics and more programs, like what the gist of everything should be.
CBS News polling from just before the debate shows a dead heat between Harris and Trump in the Commonwealth. Bucks County specifically could be tight. President Biden topped Trump by only 4 percentage points 4 years ago. Still, supporters we spoke with aren't moving off their candidate of choice, and the jury's still out on whether either candidate was able to sway swing voters during the debate.
No, it's not going to change anybody's mind.
It's hard to gauge the temperature. It changes almost daily.
Young voters are just one of the key voting blocs that could make a big difference in this election. CBS News Philadelphia's Carrie Corrado talked with students at Westchester University to get their thoughts on the race and why they're excited to cast their votes this year.
I think this is really an unprecedented situation, and young people are really involved and engaged.
Westchester University political science professor John Kennedy says in such a close election, young voters could have a dramatic deciding impact.
In a marginal race, and this appears to be a marginal race, they certainly can be the decisive factor and really maybe the biggest question mark for this election as far as voting behavior is concerned. It's potential that it certainly exists that we could wake up the day after the election and younger voters were a deciding factor.
And here at Westchester, we asked students their thoughts on the election. Many of them say they are excited to vote and that they know their vote could be a game changer.
Since senior year of high school, I've just been getting more into politics, I'd say, and just following it. And I'm excited to vote.
I think it's the biggest election in the history of the United States, so, every voice matters.
For some students, it's their first time voting in a presidential election.
This is our first presidential debate, and so I'll be going home election day and I'll be going and voting.
I think it's just important for everybody to get out there and vote. It's one of the many ways that you could share your word and your opinion.
Kennedy says it's key for both parties to try to register and engage the young voters. He says we have seen examples of this with celebrities, with the use of social media, and with the influx of information that is readily available online and on TV. He says it makes this race more interesting, compelling, and unpredictable.
Many of these voters haven't voted in the past. We don't have a record. They're also oftentimes screened out of likely voter models because they haven't voted previously. So it really presents some uncertainty as far as the election is concerned.
In Westchester, Carrie Corrado, CBS News, Philadelphia.
Well, both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump's campaigns have spent a lot of time in Philadelphia wooing black voters as well, a historically reliable vote for Democrats. Polls show that Trump has generated more support among black Americans this year. That's compared to the 2020 election. Here's Dan with more on that.
Are you guys fired up for Kamala Harris?
Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor Austin Davis rallying in Brewerytown Thursday. Davis and other PA Democrats are looking to energize black voters in Philly to back Vice President Kamala Harris and taking aim at former President Donald Trump.
I am a childless cat lady, a DEI hire with a black job. I don't think they think this is not a black job.
Both campaigns have sought to court black voters ahead of November. Our latest CBS News poll shows black voters overwhelmingly supporting Harris, 81% to 18%. However, that 18% would mark a major jump from Trump's 2020 numbers. But Harris supporters aren't buying the numbers, especially when it comes to black men.
Because she's the only candidate that has a record of actually delivering for black voters. She stood up to make our communities safer. She stood up to make sure we protect real freedom by protecting a woman's right to choose.
I can only speak for myself. My eyes are not closed, so I'll keep it open.
But the Trump campaign maintains its push to court black voters is the same push it makes to court all voters.
He's going to be a president for all Americans, and his message is no different depending on which group of voters he happens to be in, whether it's a different race or a different gender.
Deputy Communications Director Caroline Sunshine points to the former president's visit to areas like North Philadelphia and Detroit. She believes Trump's message speaks to all Americans, particularly on the economy.
Black Americans, of course, remember this. Trump economy put more money in their pockets, created better jobs, economic growth. That's a winning message for everybody.
As both campaigns make their push in Pennsylvania, black voters could make a significant difference in November's election.
Just weeks before Election Day, Donald Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, traveled to the Philadelphia area for an event in Montgomery County.
Well, CBS News Philadelphia's Josh Sanders spoke with the Ohio senator one-on-one about election integrity and if he'll accept the results of the election in Pennsylvania.
Part of it is just the battleground math, right? This is a very important state. It's obviously very closely divided.
Pennsylvania remains a critical battleground state in who wins the White House. The latest CBS News polling found among likely voters' choice for president, Vice President Kamala Harris leads former President Donald Trump 50 to 49%.
Pennsylvania, to me, represents the greatness of American manufacturing, of American energy.
We spoke one-on-one with Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance before he took the stage at a town hall in Lafayette Hill, asking about the push to win the Commonwealth and election integrity. In 2020, Pennsylvania was at the forefront of former President Trump's and other Republicans' attempts to overturn the election. Al Schmidt, Pennsylvania's Secretary of State and a lifelong Republican, refused to join those efforts.
There is no evidence whatsoever that voter fraud takes place in any way that is widespread at all.
Under Pennsylvania law, ballots cannot be processed until 7 a.m. on Election Day. We asked Vance a question many voters are concerned with after the 2020 election.
When the final vote is declared in Pennsylvania, will you accept that result regardless of the outcome, yes or no?
Yeah, look, of course, we're going to accept the final result. We also want to make sure that every legal ballot is cast and counted. We want to make sure that illegal aliens don't vote in our elections. And there's, of course,
there's no evidence of illegal aliens voting in our elections. That's against the law. That's not happening.
Sure, but people can violate the law.
In a razor-thin election, Vance hopes to capture swing voters.
And I think our message to swing voters, to everybody, is do you want higher inflation? Do you want the wide open border? Do you want the chaos all across the world? I think most voters would say no. So let's go with Donald Trump, who delivered lower prices, rising take-home pay, and most importantly, a secure southern border.
Just 3 weeks away from voters casting their ballots, all eyes will surely be on Pennsylvania. Josh Sanders, CBS News, Philadelphia.
Well, after this break, a look at the role Philadelphia's surrounding counties will be playing in the race for the White House.
Plus, key dates voters in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware need to know before Election Day. Welcome back. We turn now to Philadelphia's surrounding counties and why our entire region could determine if Trump or Harris wins Pennsylvania.
Well, in Delaware County, voters have been choosing more Democratic candidates since the 90s and 2000s, and the county went for President Biden in the 2020 election. CBS News Philadelphia reporter Madeline Wright went to Delco to talk to voters there right after Biden dropped out of the race to see how they felt about the possibility of having Kamala Harris on the ticket.
At the Wawa on Chichester Avenue and Meeting House Road, people come to fill up their gas tanks and tires. Things here tend to stay the same, but the political landscape of the country is changing.
I think our democracy is really in peril.
Fred Hamilton is a registered Republican, but says he's not planning to cast his ballot for former President Donald Trump. He and other voters are weighing in on President Biden's decision to step aside and make way for Kamala Harris.
I'm kind of excited. I wish he would have stayed in, but I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris, though.
While some voters have already made up their minds, others like Cynthia Macy say they have a lot to consider. She says Mr. Biden's decision to drop out changes things, and she's not sold on Harris.
Well, as an independent registered voter, I think now I have a different choice that I have available to me, right? But I think I need to really get more information and see where she stands on issues.
Swarthmore political science professor Ben Berger says Delaware County will play an important role in the election. In 2020, Biden secured 63% of the Delco vote, while Trump claimed 36%.
Delaware County had an 88,000 vote margin for Joe Biden, and in Pennsylvania, he won by 80,000 votes. So Delco effectively provided the margin of victory for Joe Biden in Pennsylvania.
While there's plenty of support here for the former president, Trump supporter Mazen Syed believes Harris has a shot of winning.
I think she'll have more of a fighting chance against Donald Trump than Joe Biden, but I think it's still going to go the same way.
You think Trump's going to win?
Yeah, I think Trump's going to win.
Voters say the next step is to see who becomes the Democratic nominee. In Upper Chichester, Delaware County, Madeline Wright, CBS News, Philadelphia.
In Northampton County, voters have matched the state's presidential pick in every election dating back to 1948. So I headed north to see how voters and officials there were feeling in the weeks leading up to November 5th.
It's tough. It's definitely a tough decision.
I'm a ball of anxiety.
I'm real confused.
Just 6 weeks from Election Day, voters in Easton have a lot of thoughts about the 2024 race, and their opinions may carry some extra weight. Voters here in Northampton County are pretty good at picking presidents.
So I'm not a political pundit, but history is what it is, right? And we usually call it the right way here.
Northampton County hasn't broken with the state's presidential pick since all the way back in 1948. Voters in the county have also correctly chosen the president in all but 3 elections since 1920. So with a tight race expected in Pennsylvania, we wanted to know what these voters are thinking. Some were set on their picks.
I will never vote Trump. I will always be anyone that's not him.
I think he's the best qualified for the job.
But most people we talked with Tuesday were still undecided.
What he did in his term to really help boost the economy. And then, you hear all the crazy, so it sways you in a different direction.
Kamala had an opportunity to change things the last 4 years and she didn't. Trump had an opportunity to do a little bit better as far as like promoting himself, and he hasn't. So it's like, who do you choose?
Like the state, Northampton County saw a close race in 2020, with Biden winning by just over 1,200 votes. And voters we spoke with expect more of the same this year. Many of these voters say it'll likely come down to the wire.
I'm trying to give both parties their full chance to, persuade me or get me on their side.
Yeah, I'm there. I could sway in either direction.
Just a few weeks ago, I went back to Bucks County to see if, after all the campaign stops, ads, and events with both Harris and Trump, voters felt any different about who they're voting for.
Are you decided? You still undecided?
I'm very decided.
I'm decided. Oh, I'm decided. Yeah, fully decided.
Many voters in Bucks County are ready to cast their ballots. And while the county broke for Democrats in the previous 2 elections, people who live here know how purple it really is.
Everybody is kind of very mixed bag here. You never know what you're going to get. I know people on both sides. I see both sides. I get it.
As of August 30th, there were 199,893 registered Republicans in the county and 198,957 Democrats, with about 83,000 in no or other parties. In Doylestown Tuesday, we found a pretty even split of supporters. Crystal Perez says she's voting for Vice President Harris because of reproductive rights and was moved by going to one of her events.
To see the older women that came out to support it, that went through it years ago, it's awesome because they had to fight for that right. And now they're fighting for it again, for us.
On the other side, Brian McGarry of New Hope says he's been sold on former President Trump for some time and believes the country needs a return of his leadership.
The border issue, the inflation, the financials, it's too tough for people to live.
Only a handful of people we spoke with said they were still weighing their options. Ryan Stewart says he's leaning one way, but isn't locked in. His biggest concern?
I don't want to go to a war with Iran. That's pretty much the truth.
In this home stretch, there was one thing many voters told us they wanted to see.
Personally, just like peace on both sides.
Civility. I mean, I think we're all Americans. We should be, one.
Election day is right around the corner.
The deadline to register to vote has passed in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and in Delaware, but here are other important dates and times to know before November 5th. If you want an absentee ballot in Pennsylvania, you need to request it by October 29th. Those ballots are due by 8 p.m. on Election Day. And on Election Day, polls in Pennsylvania open at 7 a.m. and close at 8 p.m. In New Jersey, let's take a look here. October 29th, it's the deadline to apply for a mail-in ballot by mail. You can apply for one online until November 1st and in person until November 4th. In the Garden State, polls open at 6 a.m. on Election Day and close at 8 p.m.
And in Delaware, the last day to request an absentee ballot by mail is November 1st. You can still get one in person until noon the day before the election. Absentee ballots must be received by 8 p.m. on Election Day. Polls are open at 7 a.m. They close at 8 p.m.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for a special election edition of CBS News Philadelphia.
You can find even more election coverage, voter guides, and the latest campaign updates on CBSPhiladelphia.com. We'll see you on Election Night.